Hey, what's up YouTube? Travis here. This is a video response to Skeletal Piper, Hilman. He asked us to take some video of us grilling or smoking some kind of meat. And today, on the anniversary of my arrival on this planet, I decided to smoke some ribs. And a little bit of background before I show you the setup and everything. I actually have a little bit of semi-formal training in smoking, and what I've learned from that training is that I know very little, and that there's many different ways to do smoking and many different ways for it to turn out great. So I'm not a purist by any stretch, but I'll tell you what I do and what I like and what works for me. I worked for a couple of years for a barbecue smokehouse, and I held pretty much every position between working cashier, working the line, and working the pit. I was pit. You kind of work your way up to pit master, and that's what I did my last about 8 months there. So I'm smoking a little bit of crushed white from Yuli's Tobacco, and it's in my Shire pipe by Missouri Meerschaum. So let's have a look at the setup. This is my smoker. Hopefully you can see it all okay. I turned the camera around and can't see what's going on anymore. This is a Horizon smoker. Company owned or operated by the same people who make the Oklahoma Joe's smokers. This was purchased out of Muskogee, Oklahoma by my wonderful wife and mother and father-in-law. It was a Christmas gift many years back, and I've gotten a lot of years of usage out of it, and it holds up very well. It has a side firebox, so I will use this firebox to grill with. You can see the grill grate down there, and I'll put charcoal in, but when I smoke, I just use hardwood, normally oak or hickory, the occasional fruit wood, but that's not really something I worry too much about. I really like just a nice kind of standard smoke flavor. I don't like to change things up a whole lot or experiment with that side. I like to experiment with the rubs and the seasonings I put on the meat. So let's take a look at what's going on inside the smoker. You might notice I have the temperature at about 225. I like to keep it between 225 and 250 for ribs. And on a day like today, when I'm having company over and I'm a little bit pressed for time, I do what's called the 3-2-1 method. Many of you may have heard of that. If you do any kind of rib smoking, you've probably heard of that, where you smoke them for 6 hours. That's the 3-2-1. The first 3 hours, they're on the smoker bare. The next 2 hours, you wrap them in foil, and the last hour, you unwrap them and leave them bare again. And that just helps tenderize the meat by trapping the moisture in. It almost kind of steams them. And I've actually done this where I will only smoke them the first 3 hours, and then I finish them in the oven inside. And that works out very well. And you are joining me at the 5-hour mark, so I'm just getting ready to take them out of the foil. And I did some St. Louis style spare ribs because that's what was on sale at my local grocery store. I'm going to put the pipe down because there's no way it will stay lit for me. So I'll have a look here. I apologize, I can't tell what you're seeing, how well lit it is, but I have 2 slabs of ribs. Then over on the side I have a pan of beans. And I like to do smoked beans when I can. Got my trusty pair of tongs here. Looks like my beans are getting close to done. I'm going to just kind of jab in and make sure they're not too far along. When I do that shallow and that small of a pan, I like to put the beans as far away from the fire as possible. So I'll try to capture on film what I'm doing and see if you can follow along. And if nothing else, I'll get you a good shot at the end if the camera works horrible during this. But I'm going to pick up the foil pack, and I'm going to set everything down on the ground here so I can... Actually, that may not work. These, I can already tell they're falling apart, which is the whole point of this. So I'll give you a look at what's happening here. So you can see I've had this going pretty toasty most of the day. It's the 21st of May, and There's almost no wind today, so it's been really easy to control the fire and keep it going as hot as I'd like it to. So I'll set the foil off to the side for now. And this can be a little bit tricky, and occasionally things fall apart. You can see, oh my gosh, I hope you can see this. It's just ripping apart. I'm not going to be able to keep this as one slab. Yep, there's one piece that just fell apart. So that is, to me, that is just fantastic. That's the mark of a very good slab of ribs. Almost lost that one. And I'll try to now, instead of narrate what you're watching, I'll try to tell you a little bit about the seasoning that I do ahead of time. I have two different recipes for ribs. It depends if I want a smoky rib or if I want a sweet rib. And I did smoky ribs because those tend to appeal to more people, not the general public. And I have some company coming over. I've never barbecued for these folks before, so I'm just trying to hit what most people would prefer and appreciate. With that said, I'm going to tell you what with this slab piece. With that said, what I do for my smoky ribs is that I will create a little bit of a rub. It's nothing super fancy. It is just kosher salt, cracked ground black pepper, paprika, Lowry seasoning salt, chili powder, and usually a little bit of whatever I have on hand that sounds good. I put some Old Bay seasoning on there, a little bit of cayenne, and what else? Oh, and then I put just about 3 tablespoons of brown sugar over the top. And I know that I said this was a smoky rib, not a sweet rib, but I'll tell you what my sweet rib recipe is as well. So let's have a look here. A little bit of pitmaster privilege here. I'll take a little bit. Fantastic. Now, what I do for my sweet rib is I will mix together some teriyaki sauce, brown sugar, and chili powder, and I'll dress that over the top of the rib. Then I will put a layer of brown sugar over the top before I put them on, and then follow the same 3-2-1 cooking method. If I don't do the 3-2-1 cooking method, where I have the wrapping in the middle, what I will do is usually baste them throughout, and I usually do that with a little spray bottle with either water or apple juice, whatever I have available. Alright, sorry about that quick interruption, but just wanted to finish my thought on this real quick. So as I was saying with my sweet ribs, I'll usually end up putting somewhere around a half a cup of brown sugar on each one, and I'll baste them with apple juice as they go through. But that gives it's more of a sticky glaze type of rib, very, very sweet. As long as you keep the temperature around 225 or lower with those, or if you keep them wrapped, that sugar and teriyaki doesn't burn, it just kind of caramelizes, and it's very nice. I'll show you what's inside the side box right now. You can tell I just have, well, maybe you can tell, not much happening right now, just kind of smoldering along. That's really all it needs on a day like today. It's nice and comfortable temperature outside. Comfortable temperature outside and hardly any wind at all, so it's easy to control the temperatures on days like today. It's when you're smoking in sub-zero weather that I can say I've done a few times. That's when it gets a little bit tricky, but also a lot of fun. So, Hilman, I hope that you and other people get something out of this and get to see a little bit about how I take on the smoking challenges, I suppose. Today was ribs, but I also really like to do pork butt, chickens, occasionally brisket, and then I do a few smaller things, salmon occasionally, jalapeno poppers, just chicken wings, things that are fun to do when you're on the smoker. But I had it loaded up today with a couple slabs of ribs and a pan of beans, and pretty soon we'll be eating. So hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time.